You'll never believe it. I've bought myself a Christmas magazine and it's a beautiful autumn day, but it's less than 3 months till the big day and I thought you'd enjoy flicking through the pages with me. Now, if you're not already a subscriber to my channel, I would love it if you would consider subscribing. All you need to do is to tap the button marked subscribe, and that means next time you open the YouTube app on your phone, your tablet or your computer, one of my videos will be waiting for you. So mainly I share flower arranging hints and tips, trips out to the charity shop. Right, put the kettle on, it's time to get started, and as you can see, I've already picked out some of the pages in the magazine, which interests me. Have you got a cup of tea on the go too? So make yourself cosy and let's flick through the pages of the Christmas 2024 edition of the Country Living collection. Now I think rather than being a new magazine of ideas, it's, as it says at the bottom here, a selection of stories and pictures from the Country Living archives. So you'll have to see whether you can spot anything you recognise from previous years. Nothing to me seems familiar though, so I'm quite happy to buy this as a new magazine for new inspiration. And I've marked some of the pages I'm particularly interested in, and what I tend to do is to also write on those sticky notes what it was on that page that grabbed my attention. And in this case, it says celery vase, brackets, Christmas baubles. And the pair of vases here reminded me that I have got my own celery vase. Do you remember I went to the charity shops in Canterbury several years ago and I bought myself a Chippendale glass celery vase. Now I don't know whether it is actually Chippendale, but it's definitely in the style of it. Mine is a trophy vase. It's got handles on the side and I use that for celery, but I also use it for other things too, and most recently for cutlery storage. So I had some friends over from a fancy breakfast a few weeks ago, and because I didn't really have much space on my table, I put the cutlery in my celery vase, and then everyone could pick and choose what it was that they wanted to use depending on what they decided to eat. So I'm thinking I could get my celery vase out at Christmas, put it on my table and fill it with, well, it could be anything, perhaps even the leftovers from Christmas door wreath making, small pine cones, sliced oranges, or indeed my Christmas baubles that didn't make it onto the tree. And this is my celery vase. So it does actually sit out on my kitchen counter with celery in it, but look how great it would be with Christmas baubles tucked inside. A bargain at £3.50. I have an idea it might be Chippendale glass, but I'm not entirely sure. So if you know more about glassware than I do, let me know in the comments whether I've got myself a copy or the real thing. Now, I put this tab on the side rather than the top page of the magazine, and I've made the note, ruffled plate, £25. This caught my eye, something new. It almost looks like a pie crust. But to me, it's vintage that talks to me rather than brand new plates, and at £25 a time, I'm not entirely sure I could afford them. But check out the little Christmas tree on top of the plates. That looks like a little plant pot wrapped with ribbon and then an offcut, a sprig of Christmas greenery planted inside. Gives it a very naturalistic look. And talking about Christmas trees, I rather like this page here with the line of all sorts of trees across the shelf. Now I'll have to go up into the loft and remind myself what trees I've got. I've definitely got a pair of simple cutouts which are surfaced with silver birch bark. I seem to recall a small glass Christmas tree in the style of a Baccarat Christmas tree that I saw in a magazine a while ago. Of course, these sprigs I could plant up nearer the time. And I know I've also got bottle brush trees as well, so I could have my own little forest of different trees, perhaps running along my mantelpiece or across my sideboard. Ah, a heart-baked wreath. Now, if you've been following me for a while and you're a member of my free Facebook group, you might recognise this idea of making a gingerbread style wreath. And one of the ladies in the group, I think it was Jane, gave me her recipe for making salt dough with a really heady mix of spices. Now, what I'll try and do is to put that recipe in the description underneath this video, and I'll certainly try and link the video of the decorations I made. They never quite made it into a wreath, but I do remember icing my cutout shapes using a 3D fabric paint which came in a squeezy jar, so I can put a link to that in the description if you fancy icing your wreath too. Now, I haven't opened this box of homemade salt dough Christmas decorations for, well, it's at least a year, if not 2 years. So I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to find inside. I can't see any mould yet, but this one has faded a little bit. Perhaps it was always that pale brown colour. So you can see I've tried to make them look like real ginger biscuits and use the 3D fabric paint to create the icing detail on top. I went for a very simple Scandi looking pattern, a straight line with a V, a straight line with a V, and repeated that right the way round the circle. I wish I didn't get round to putting a tie on that one. And there is still a scent of cinnamon. So I must have made these in lockdown 3 years ago. Oh, and it's just like opening a Christmas present. Doesn't that look so festive? Well, I'm really pleased I put the effort in with these all those years ago. So I'm going to pack them away and bring them out at Christmas time, or perhaps even I might tumble them in to my celery vase and display them that way instead. Painted pine cones. Now, I did a series of Vlogmas videos a few years ago, and I'm certain there's one on painting pine cones. The trick with your pine cones is don't wait until Christmas to collect them. Collect them at any time of the year, and don't be put off if they are closed, because these are like little weather vanes, weather barometers, little weather people. And during wet, damp, cold weather, the pine cones close up and then they open up when it gets warmer. So the thing to do is to pick up all the pine cones everyone else has discarded. And then when they're dried out, you can get a paintbrush and some acrylic paint, any white paint you've got to hand, and just brush down the closed pine cone, let the paint dry, and then over time, and it doesn't take too long, perhaps a week in your warm living room, the pine cones will open up, and it just saves you the effort of trying to paint every single little bit of the pine cone. You can just do it with 1, 2, 3, 4, perhaps 5 paint strokes. And if I can find that video, I'll link it in the description underneath this one. And do you ever use a straw wreath as the base to your door wreaths? It can be quite tricky to use because they're so dense, but I certainly remember last year or the year before when I was flicking through Country Living that they had styled up an area where they had hung metal wreath rings on hooks, and it looked really great. And again, I think I've got a playlist of the videos and books I flick through for flower arranging, and I'll try and leave a link to those videos again in the description underneath this one. And do you know how to find the things that I leave in the description? If you go back to the main view of the video, you'll see the description of the video, and sometimes it either has dots or a little down arrow, and if you click on that, it opens up the whole box that gives you the full title, and then you can read all the information about the video with any links to videos and things that you could buy. Now, in fact, I have just been up into my loft to start an initial sift through of my Christmas bits and bobs to get me ready for my Christmas classes. And rather bizarrely, not only have I found my straw wreath, but I've also, by accident, even got these snowy blotches on it. And it turns out, as I remembered, it was the wreath I used to make my horse chestnut wreath, my conker wreath, last autumn. And all these little white bits for me were the residue from my hot glue gun. You're probably in time to make your own horse chestnut wreath. So again, I'll leave a link to that in the description underneath the video. And if you love all things door wreaths, I've got a playlist too, so I'll make sure I leave a link to the playlist. Paper star, this note says, and it's these paper stars by the hearth of the fire. Now, I made myself some paper stars. They're quite addictive once you get going, using a simple origami technique. And I use the pages from a good quality clothing catalogue, really substantial pages. You could use sheets from an old book, sheets from a magazine, but you need something reasonably firm so your star doesn't flop. I'll leave a link to that video underneath this one too. And the way I made my star was to make the 5 individual components, and then you flatten them up and you put glue on them. So you glue here and then attach the next star, and you'll end up with a sort of concertina effect. And then you put the glue on the last side, and then you open up the star, glue it together, and I normally put pegs here to hold it. And what you can do is don't glue the last piece. And if you just add a paper clip, it means at the end of the festive period, you can fold your star back down and clip it together, and it'll easily store for another year. And this is the paper star, which has been sitting in my fireplace for the last year. Once you've worked out how to make the first segment, it's really easy then to use that as your template to make the other 4. I glue mine together, but you could quite easily not glue those last 2 segments together and just pin them together with a paper clip. And then after Christmas, take off the paper clip and everything would fold down. Your star would be more easily storable. I've marked this page because of the moss wreath. That just goes to show you don't have to complete your door wreath. If you only get as far as mossing yours, why not make a feature of it? And you might not want to hang it on the back of a fabric dining chair, but it would look fabulous on your front door with a simple bow. Now, as I look back at the page, my eye is being drawn to the pair of glass cloches. I was given a round one like this a few years ago as a present, and I've never quite known what to do with it, but I'm just thinking I have got a glass cake stand that's raised up a little bit. I might use that cloche as something to put over the cake stand, and I could make perhaps a little decorative scene inside. Perhaps if I've got some of the leftover trees from my winter woodland mantelpiece arrangement, I could put some trees in there with pine cones. And this was the cloche, or would you call it a bell jar, that I was talking to you about. It was gifted to me at Christmas time 5 or 6 years ago. And I have crafted with it. Don't look at all the dust and dirt at the top, but I created a little paper cut scene to look like a little winter village, and put fairy lights inside, and then stuck some stars and glitter at the top, and it looked really effective. But perhaps this year I'll take inspiration from country living and display something underneath the bell jar to make a centerpiece for my table. Here's a cake plate that I bought at a car boot fair years and years ago, and you can see if I put the two together, it makes a wonderful display container. So will I go for baubles inside, perhaps a candle, or even some festive greenery around the edge? Let me know in the comments what you'd do. Covered vegetable dish, my note says here. So here is a stack of vegetable dishes. So now is the time to be thinking about your forced spring bulbs. In fact, I bought some bulbs a couple of weeks ago, just in readiness, because they do tend to sell out quite quickly. So I've bought some white hyacinths, and what I'm going to do is use my grandmother's covered vegetable bowls. Those are flatter than this. They don't have that little pedestal area, with a very subtle, from memory, blue pattern One of them's got a lid and one hasn't, so I'll keep the spare lid safe and then plant them up, perhaps a little bit closer to Christmas. They normally say they take about 10 weeks to flower. I don't think I want my bulbs flowering at Christmas time. I want them for a bit of cheer in the dark, cold months of January and February. And the covered vegetable bowls I was telling you about, well, these used to belong to my granny. So I've got one with a lid and one without. I rather like the subtle pattern around the edge. It's a gold line with gold dots and then a wavy blue line with blue and purple flowers and little sprigs of greenery. And a while ago, I went to our street market to buy some hyacinth bulbs. You really do have to buy them quite early because they are very popular. So in due course, I'll be planting these inside my container to enjoy a little bit of floral interest in the cold early months of the year. So I think I went for 2, 4. I've managed to fit all 8 in there comfortably, so if I want to have 2 bowls on the go, I'm going to have to remind myself to go out and buy 8 more. Ice skates. Spot the ice skates. Here are the ice skates. I have been looking for ice skates for years and years and years. Ever since I saw a pair that had been decorated with red ribbons and had some Christmas foliage tucked inside and then hung on a front door so they looked like a door wreath. And lo and behold, I found some. And this is a package that arrived from Vinted a few weeks ago. I have been searching and searching for ice skates for absolutely ages, and I think these only cost me £3.50 and a little bit more with postage, but they will look really great tied up on my front door with some sprigs of greenery. This note says autumn wreath. It's our flower club coming up soon in town, and this autumn wreath has reminded me that we are making our own autumn wreaths at Flower Club. This one reminded me of the door wreath I made with you at Zoom Flower Club. Was that last year or the year before? And I can remember that I used lots of dried materials, which I think may have come from my garden, or from bouquets of flowers I'd had that year, which I'd dried. And then to give it a pop of colour, I sprayed some florets of hydrangea with orange spray paint and then just randomly glued them onto the wreath. I've still got that wreath, so I'll see if I can show you a picture of it. Now, I can't believe how similar my autumn door wreath looks to that picture that I showed you in the magazine. So I've used wheat, barley, dried nigella seed pods, poppies, a little bit of lavender, some carthmus, the little tufts here with orange, and the other orange bits are dried hydrangea, which have had a really light spray of orange paint. And for all you keen wreath makers out there, this is what the back of my wreath looks like. It was a very thin single metal frame, a bit like a huge dream catcher frame, which I've covered with moss and then decorated on the front. I've just written saving wrapping paper ! Now that is something that I always do. It says, after opening presents, try to reuse the wrap. It's great for lining shelves, covering books, or cutting into gift tags for next year. But that all depends on the quality of the wrapping paper. Only really works if you've got a nice firm paper, not the kind that rips as soon as you try to take off the tape. I tend to save my wrapping paper for Christmas crafting projects, and I've got quite a stack of it. Look. Candle arrangements, it said, look at these beautiful arrangements. And again, this might be something reminiscent from Zoom Flower Club if you've been a member. I think particularly something we did during the lockdown years, 2020 onwards, taking small cups adding in a candle. You know how you add in candles into an arrangement? By putting floristry wires in a loop around the base of your candle, or you can use cocktail sticks. But this is a really simple way of adding a little bit of festive hygge to your Christmas time. Of course, just be careful if you light the candles that you keep watch on them, because you don't want them setting light to any dried materials that you've used. Oh, waxed hyacinth bulbs. Now this is something that we've done in Zoom flower class. You don't need to plant your bulbs, the hyacinth bulb here, in order to get it to flower. And this gives a really decorative finish. So what you have to do is cut off any roots that you've got in the bulb. All your energy for the flower that will develop is stored inside the bulb. So what I did one year is I collected all my odds and ends of candles and put them in a pot to melt. So I've got an old-fashioned teapot, which I fill with all my candle ends, and then put that in a pan of boiling water and then wait for the wax to melt. And then very carefully holding the tip of the bulb, is you need to make sure that what you're melting the wax in, it could be a tin can, but you need to make sure the width of the bulb fits inside the receptacle where you're melting the wax. And you just dip it into the wax, making sure you don't dip your fingers in because you'll burn yourself, and then lift it out and then put it on a sheet of greaseproof paper to dry. And it works really well. And in fact, this I think is my favourite stage of hyacinths, especially when you're growing them to enjoy indoors. You get a nice bit of leaf growth, and then you can just see the buds starting to appear. Once the whole flower spike develops, it becomes top heavy and they start to rock over a little bit. But you could always tumble them into a fruit bowl and just have them spilling out everywhere. A great project if you've got the time and inclination. It's much easier than it looks. And again, if I can find that video, I'll leave a link to it in the description underneath this one. Wrapped candles, it says here. Oh, here. A bundle of candles. So I love candles. My husband doesn't quite like them as much. I think what he doesn't like is when you've blown them out and that sooty smell that you get. But it can be quite nice if you enjoy having candles at home, or perhaps you like them but don't want to light them, is to bundle them up. This one's been bundled up in some ribbon. So you can get your candles, find some festive ribbon, and then just have them on the side. You might have a tray of things on your table, perhaps your waxed hyacinth bulb, your celery vase with your baubles in it, and then perhaps some candles off to one side, so it looks like you're all ready to go and living that magazine perfect life. Mantle vase. I like spotting these mantle vases. We used to think of them as being so old-fashioned, and then they really are in vogue at the moment. And this one here has been used as a bulb planter. So it's got the hyacinth bulbs, and they've packed the container with moss. And next to it is a wooden crate or a tray with excess Christmas foliage, trimmings from the Christmas tree, and pillar candles, quite tall pillar candles, so they can be lit without any risk of it setting fire to the greenery. There's an item here on how to make hand-poured candles, and this is what I was talking about, collecting your odds and ends of candles and then using a bain-marie, where you've got one container at the top and then it sits over a pan of boiling water, a sort of double boiler. You can buy the little wax wicks if you decide to make your own candles, and again I'll leave a link to those in the description underneath this video. In previous years when I've been making candles for myself and I've not had wicks, I've just taken a piece of string and dipped it in the wax and made my own homemade wick. If you're thinking of making candles and gifting them or using them for yourself, just be really careful about the receptacle you choose. I can see here a little vintage teacup and saucer, a coffee cup actually. If your container isn't robust enough, thick enough, you run the risk that with the heat of the candle it might actually explode. So go for something chunky. If you think about those candle jars that you get, it's they're in a jar, but it's not like a drinking glass. It's always a much chunkier candle. So have a look in the charity shops and see what you can find. And these are my candle making supplies. An old metal teapot. You can see it's got some candles inside. I then set that inside a pan of boiling water, and it means I can pour it out into the moulds that I want to use. And I've got an ongoing collection of candles, so I put them in this metal tin, and when I'm ready to melt them down, they go into my teapot. And for the wicks, I've bought some supplies online, so if you're interested in sourcing your own, I'll leave the link to what I bought in the description underneath the video. Twig star. Oh, that's a really great thing to make as well. This is a 6-pointed star. My preference is for a 5-pointed star. And if you're very clever, you can make one all in one go. It's a matter of thinking where you're going as you draw your star. Quite easy to do, but you need to get your head around it. And again, I think I made one in a previous Vlogmas video, so I shall make sure to look out for that and link it in the description underneath this video. And look, these hyacinths are always a winner. So here they are in flower. These ones are quite short, and here they are about to burst into flower. So if you wanted to gift hyacinths, you need to give them about 10 weeks to get to this stage, and then your recipient can enjoy them as they burst into bloom. I think that brings me to the end of the pages that particularly interested me. If I flipped over the pages and you spotted something I didn't talk about, let me know in the comments and we can have a chat about what it was that's inspired you. Well, that's all from me for now, and I'll see you again next time.